Alright, I want y'all to think about this. Let's say you owe some money. You owe money to two different parties, right? You have enough to pay off one of them. On one hand, you owe the American Mafia in its glory and its heyday. And on the other hand, you owe the Mexican cartel in its glory and its heyday. Which one are you more afraid of? Which one are you making sure you get paid? Which one do you think you have the better chance of ducking and dodging from? We're gonna find out on this week's edition of Versus. We're doing it. American Mafia versus the Mexican cartel. But which one is the most dangerous? Which one is the most ruthless? Which one is the most scariest? Which one is that strikes fear in the most hearts of people all across the world? We'll find out. Stay tuned. See you on the other side.
Something wrong. You don't know what it is, but it's there.
Nah, I definitely agree with that shit. Damn, Beretta, man. Fuck. Bro, I know you got vices, man, but you gotta think sometimes. Shit. Some of this shit don't even call for. Bro, I was talking to my suckers on the wall. Listen, mirror on the wall. Who the really nigga in it?
I think one thing that has to definitely be mentioned when we're speaking about the mob is the level of discipline and the level of organization that takes, right? It's like, even in the criminal underworld, it's still structured in such a way where you can't just do shit willy-nilly just for the fuck of it, you know what I mean? It's like, there's no long-term gain if everybody just out there on some real stupid shit. So, for them to organize and get as best they could all the criminal hierarchies to kind of buy into this structured system, that actually was quite amazing when you really think about it. And what they was able to do, they was able to create a structure, a system that a lot of companies actually mirrored their business structure behind, because like I said, you have CEOs and you have a lot of officers, chief financial officers, a lot of things up under the CEO that carries out a lot of the orders that they would give out to the lieutenants, a lot of these other district managers and things of that nature. Then they go out and give the orders to their people. So that same structure is still around today. It's in usage because it has been proven to be very effective. Now, back in the early days, like I said, they started up in America as far as the American Mafia. Late 1800s, early 1900s, you know what I mean? Your boy Rothstein over there in New York, they call him AR, man. Homeboy got fucked up and I guess they called him some kind of way, man. But he had to fix the Super Bowl. Like, gambling and prostitution, I think was like their first major endeavors. But they also did taxes, meaning like if you live within a certain region that was occupied by these mafia families, or if you had a shop or you did business within one of these regions, you had to pay a tax, just like how you pay property tax now to the government. The mob, they already was on that shit, so you got to pay them just for being in that area. And if you feel like you big, bad, and tough, I mean, you ain't gotta pay them, you know what I mean? But your wife might come up dead, or you might come up dead, kids might come up missing, you know what I mean? Like, they was willing to intimidate by making sure that they got their point across. They wasn't afraid to use violence because, I mean, back in those days, violence was just part of conquering. I mean, it's just like this. The whole country was founded on violence, if you really break it down. But like I said, we just talking about the mafia and the cartels right now. So with that mentality, like I said, they was able to organize the violence, meaning for the most part, they really used violence when it suited their needs. So it wasn't just like random killings. It was like most of that shit had motive to it. Generally, people was trying to get bigger, like number twos was trying to become number ones. And like I say, when it really was first starting, it was basically gambling, prostitution, and just, you know, taxes. Oh, look, bitch, you gotta pay me because you live here and I want you to. It's basically like stealing a bitch lunch money, right? But somewhere around, I think like 1910s, 20s, the government, with their brilliant business savvy, decided that alcohol was causing too much of a problem. So they made that shit illegal, which is what we now know of today as prohibition, right? Now, what the fuck that did was that made alcohol a hot commodity in the streets, you know what I mean? And if you could get it by like the loaves, I mean, the shit was illegal. You can't go buy that shit out of a store. So a lot of these mafia guys saw a lot of money within that, so they control the import, they control the distribution, they control who sells it, and they also control where you can sell that shit at, because back in them days, motherfuckers gonna drink, you know what I mean? And because it's illegal, you can only go but so many places to drink. And up around that New Jersey, New York, Chicago, all the way up in there, I mean, it was a lot of people. I mean, they had a whole lot of those towns was built off illegal alcohol. The bootlegging industry was a big money maker for a lot of those guys, right? But like I said, that organization and the way they had it, it made them much more dangerous than just your average criminal. Because what they was able to do was put their money to a lot of good use. They invested in a lot of politicians. They did a lot of campaign contributions. A lot of the people that was in the governments and a lot of these lawmakers and stuff like that were in the pockets of these mafia guys. You know what I mean? It's like you didn't know how far their power reached, which gave them another element of fear. You know what I mean? It made you like kind of work because you didn't know how much shit they could control. You know what I mean? Like they got judges, they got police officers, police chiefs, commissioners, mayors, all that shit. So I mean, you really don't know who is on what side of the law. But now with that being said, they do have to get people in their pocket. Basically, they have to find people that they can corrupt. So I'm pointing that out to say that they still have to work within the confines of the American law. You know what I mean? It wasn't like they pretty much own America, you know what I mean? They just had to do what they had to do to the best that they can. Now, they made a whole lot of decisions, a lot of policies that were structured by a lot of these mafia preferences. So that is something that can't be understated. Lucky Luciano was one of the ones that once he kind of took over his syndicate, was able to organize I think the other 5 families, and they was able to really dominate that era. And they had their structure very, very well. It was like a well-oiled machine. I mean, everybody knew their part. Everybody played their role. They really was able to do with illegal criminal activities what a lot of modern companies do now in legal terms. It was like for example, Walmart. Walmart probably one of the biggest industries on the block. Like their goal is not to be everybody's friend. You know what I'm saying? It's like you buy your products from us, but all you other companies that sell the same products that we sell, we're going to destroy you. You know what I mean? You're going to have to go somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? We're going to own this whole territory. And that's pretty much how it was back then. Only instead of just relying on sales and legalities, a lot of that was marked by violence and illegal alcohol. Now, on top of the alcohol being illegal, this is around the same time that heroin, cocaine, a lot of these things was also being imported in. Now, at first, a lot of these mafia families was real hesitant about getting into the drug business. I mean, you gotta remember, they was doing very well just off like taxes, fucking gambling, like prostitution, like, so they really saw the drug game as messy. That was kind of beneath them. You know, these guys are polished guys. You know, they come through with the tailor-made suits. They come dressed down, you know what I mean? They really had a real pride about themselves. I mean, they didn't see themselves as just your low-level thug, you know what I mean? They saw themselves as up there with like presidents and fucking, you know what I mean? Like really important people. But with that being said, I mean, once the drugs really started flooding America and it was really as profitable as it was, I mean, it was almost like inevitable. Like, you couldn't really avoid it. So once they started digging into the drug game, it's like a lot of money changed hands. A lot of law enforcement became crooked. But at the end of the day, that same structured system, that well-oiled machine, eventually started to get a little dull as the generations like started to get more and more. It was like the younger guys didn't have that same level of respect as the older guys. And then, because all before, I mean, them boys would rather die before they even talk about this. Like, the rap was like the worst thing you could be. And then now you got guys making documentaries, like, you know what I'm saying, just, you know what I'm saying, spilling all the fucking tea. You know what I mean? And it was like sad that they had set it up in such a way that the children fucked it up, if you really want to be for real. But anytime you dealing with an organization or any type of criminal enterprise that involves that many people, you can't trust everybody, man, because everybody gonna eventually want to be in charge. Everybody think they want to be the boss until they have to deal with those responsibilities. So you're gonna have a lot of people that's really like plotting against you. There was a lot of that going on in the mafia. There was a lot of people like trying to figure out how can they knock their boss off, how can they, you know what I'm saying, make their situation better at the expense of someone that's supposed to be on their team. So they did, like I said, they had some goods. The good, like I said, they had a nice structure. That hierarchy system, that order is still around today in a lot of businesses. So they did have some good that they was able to implement. They gave back to the community. They was kind of, you know, real nice and devils with their money for the most part. I mean, for the most part, they gave out turkeys and shit like that. But as far as it pertains to the cartel, there's going to be some key differences that I'm going to touch on here in a quick second. I just wanted to make sure I got the basic facts of the mafia. Like I said, the main thing about the mafia, I think people just focus on like the killings and stuff like that. But it wasn't just them murdering people just for the hell of it. Like, most of the time when they did have to murder somebody, that shit had a chain of command. Like, that shit had to be green lighted by the motherfucking, the Don, you know what I'm saying? Like, whoever was on the top. And then it had to be carried out by someone who was worthy of making sure that that task was carried out in the way it was supposed to be carried out. And if anybody, like, got out of line and, like, killed somebody they wasn't supposed to kill, like, it was consequences. And like both sides was able to sit down and talk. Like, that's the thing that really shocked me about the mafia. Is like, you got these opposing sides that even in the midst of war, you will still have the two heads being able to sit down at a table. You know what I mean? It's like security out the motherfucker now. All of them got goons on top of goons, got guns on top of guns, ready to bust off if anything gets stupid. But the fact that they'll have that dialogue, it wasn't just shoot them up, bang, bang, bang. It was a structure and it was a system. And I think that was how they intended for it to be. Unfortunately, as time went on and money and drugs became more and more prevalent, it started to become less disciplined and a lot more selfish. A lot of motherfuckers was just like, fuck the next man. Like, we really ain't in it like how the generations came before them was in it. You know what I mean? So, now let's kind of touch on some of the cartel principles for the most part. So the first thing that I really want to make sure that I point out real clearly is that the American Mafia, as far as what we're describing for this debate, I'm talking about that ones that operated on American soil. Because I know they had a lot of affiliates in a lot of other countries. Like, I'm talking about the ones that operated on American soil. The reason that it's important is when we talk about this cartel. Now, a lot of that structure, a lot of those disciplines, a lot of those rules that was put in place in American Mafia, that shit just wasn't the case down there in Mexico. It just wasn't. I'm gonna tell you the main reason why is it was hinted at, as I was saying, about as far as the mafia had so many of the law in their pocket, meaning they had so many people that they would pay off, people that they would bribe. It wasn't like that with the cartel. See, the cartel in Mexico, they got more free range. Like, they not having to circumvent and do all this shit like in the shadows. Them niggas got more power than most of the governments, you know what I'm saying? It's like, they not ducking and dodging the law enforcement. The law enforcements are trying to work around them, you know what I mean? It's like, the cartel, they giving off all the orders. But there was one major problem that the cartel, I ain't gonna say problem, I'm gonna come for me, you know what I mean? But I'm gonna put it like this. I think one of the issues that came up is that what the cartel had was a large amount of supplies of, first I think it was marijuana was like one of their biggest imports. I mean, they used to bring that shit up through Mexico, take that shit to California, used to make a killing off that shit, right? But then as like heroin and cocaine and all of that stuff became more prevalent, then they pretty much went down there and took over like all of them like coca fields and all that shit down in Colombia. That's why like that shit, they don't even, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a whole different legal system down there, you know what I mean? So pretty much as they did that, a lot of these people got rich like instantly. But a lot of their biggest clients was in the States. So their main thing was getting their product to the United States of America by any means necessary. Now, as far as getting it through Mexico was no problem, because like I said, they didn't have to like circumvent their laws and try to have to, you know what I'm saying, manipulate and weave and ski. Like, they would kill anything and they would make a display out of it. I mean, they had motherfuckers tied up, hanging from fucking light poles. They was like tying bodies up to the back of their vehicles and driving down the street of major cities, like just to show that, you know, like it's a public display of violence. And the cartel, even to this day, have been known to make spectacles out of any form of disrespect. They weren't like the mafia. The mafia was more, we behind the scenes, and like, you know what I'm saying, we not gonna make it like we don't know anything about no illegal activity. We're completely legit. Everything's on file. Everything y'all got on us is speculation. With the cartel, it wasn't none of that. They telling you, bitch, we gonna kill your whole family. It's just like that. Difference is the mafia was operating on American soil. See, like, they had that free range in Mexico, but the cartel really like is different in the States because you got different law enforcement agencies that are under different branches of the judicial system. Like, you got the executive branch, then I think you got like the judicial, you know what I'm saying? You got different forms. So like the FBI and the DEA and the CIA and all that shit is all different, you know what I mean? It's like they got information that some hiding from the other one, you know what I'm saying? It's not a real cohesive unit. They not like all together. It's not like you can really get ahead of that shit. And really the name of the game when it comes down to that shit is money. So I think really what it came down to is they really wasn't trying to stop the drugs from coming into America. Because the cartels, obviously that's their main business, you know what I'm saying, is moving narcotics, right? But think about this. If you're a DEA agent, DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, right? Ask yourself this. Let's say you succeed. Let's say that you did your part and motherfuckers like, you know what? I'm not trying to go to prison. I don't want to lose my life in this shit. We're just going to give it up and we're going to follow the law. If no one was dealing drugs or bringing drugs into the country, the DEA as an agency would cease to exist. All of those jobs would be lost. Their whole mindset was, we want the drug dealers to make as much money as possible selling drugs. Why? Because for however much money they make selling drugs, that's how much money they tell the government that they need to combat the drugs. You see how that shit works? So in other words, if a DEA agent, he's watching the drug dealer saying, if the drug dealer is making $1 billion, I need $1 billion in order to compete with him. You know what I mean? Now, if that drug dealer stops selling drugs and he's making all this money legit, then you don't need that DEA agent. Now he's unemployed. You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is, it's not as black and white as they make it seem, because the killings is gonna always accompany any large amounts of money, any big organizations. That's just always gonna be a part of it, right? Now, America turned a blind eye to a lot of that shit, because what they'll say is, well, it's in Mexico, it's not our jurisdiction. But they knew well aware of the fact that a lot of these Mexican cartels had a lot of drugs coming into the United States of America, and it was like this. They basically needed the drugs, but they didn't want the embarrassment of having like the cartel like doing all these killings and stuff, because they knew they couldn't really check them like that. Because one thing about the cartel, the motherfucker big, dog. It's like the mafia. I give you this. Mafia is organized, but a lot of that mafia shit, right, is splinter. What I mean by that, you got one family over here, then you got another family over here, and like they all kind of cutting each other, right? Now these cartels, they got different cartels too, and they go to war with each other, right? But at the same time, like most of the time, those cartels within the camp, they be like together, like they be down for that shit, like they be like ride or die, like they would literally come and like kill your family, like together on some like about that shit, like they're extra violent. It's less negotiation and less reasoning with the cartel. It's just really more of like, you might turn the key in your ignition and your car fucking blow up, you know what I mean? But as far as the longevity, I just think that if everything would have stayed like it was supposed to, the mafia probably had a better idea, a better business proposal on paper per se. But if any of y'all familiar with The Wire, you know what I'm saying? I know I refer to that a lot because that's the show. Oh, speaking of that, I want to give a shout out to my big homie, A Man's World. He got a podcast on YouTube, man. Y'all check him out, man. Like, he breaks that shit down like to the T. But the reason why I was dragging up The Wire is because when I think of the mafia versus the cartel, it brings me back to Avon and Stringer, right? When I think of the mafia is kind of like a stringer. You know what I mean? Like on paper, they got the right plan. They got the right business acumen. They're going to go about it the right way as far as putting the correct pieces in place. And it seems like it should work fine on paper. But the Avon would be more of the cartel. And they just know that shit don't work out like that. And they just soldiers, you know what I mean? And from a distance, it'll look like that's the dumb way of doing it. I mean, you can make money, you can sell business, you can sell whatever you gotta sell to people who trying to buy without all the chaos and yada yada yada, and everybody can work in harmony. That sounds good, but in actuality, that's a fucking fairy tale. It never works like that. It never works like that. And if you don't believe it works like that, I want you to look at it like this. No matter where you look in the world, in nature, in science, in biology, right? You can have a plentiful amount of food. You can have deers on top of deers, grass on top of grass. Animals will still find a way to kill each other. Whether it's sex, whether it's food, whether it's just because I just feel like killing another animal. Like, biologically, it's just not going to be a scenario where everybody gets along in peace and harmony and cohesiveness. Because there's a thing called jealousy. There's a thing called envy. There's a thing called greed. There's a thing called just nasty, narcissistic type personalities, to where even if you have everything set to a T, there are going to be people that's just going to buck the system. It's going to be people that's going to be willing to bring you down to elevate themselves. Now, when you see or encounter things of that nature, it's ways you can handle it. It's ways you can try to address it. But the most effective way is to eliminate it. Now, it's kind of like oxymoronic, because by eliminating it, you're contributing to the violence that you're trying to also go away from. But the point that I'm making is for the people who really like succeed in that, they realize that you can't have one without the other. You're not going to be able to be successful and be friends with everybody. You're not going to be able to have everything and have everybody like cool with that. For everything you have, there's somebody else that want to take that shit. And if they feel like you weak enough for them to take it, they're going to try to take that shit. So I'm not saying I condone violence. I just understand it. And I think the mafia tried to use it more as, you know what I mean, discreetly. And I think the cartels, they were more bold and out and about with it. Now, the problem with that is I think because the mafia had their hands in a little bit more, it's like the money and their politics, they had a little bit more control over like land deals, laws, like the things that show up in bills of constitutions and stuff that shows up in like the actual law books. I think the cartel wasn't as in depth as far as getting into like the politics and all of that. Like they really wasn't known to be like infiltrated into like these different agencies. But see, like the mafia was doing the same shit that the FBI and the CIA was doing to the criminals. Like they was sitting motherfuckers like undercover to the goddamn police, you know what I mean? Cause think about it, if you're an FBI agent, let's say you make motherfucking what, $50,000, $60,000 a year, you know what I'm saying? These motherfuckers making millions of dollars, like, you feel me? So if they willing to pay you, you know what I'm saying, what, 100,000, 200,000 a year, doubling or tripling what you make at your job, who ain't gonna take that by there? Nevertheless, not to mention, if you fuck up at your job, they gonna fire you. If you fuck up with them, they gonna kill you. And they might not even kill you. They might torture the shit out your ass, you know what I'm saying? They might kill your family. But that's what I'm saying. Like, they had a lot of leverage and they dealt with a whole lot of, I call them like backhand deals, to where it's like, I'm gonna give you an option, but you really don't have an option because the scenario is gonna play itself out to where in order for you to stay alive, you're gonna have to do what the fuck I want you to do. And see, with the cartel, it was just more force. It was less finesse, more force. But I think that because they had so many moving pieces and so many people ambitious in the mafia, and that's what ended up leading to a lot of those guys snitching and turning fed and all that shit. And I'm very well sure that the mafia is still around. I'm quite sure they still have some strongholds in America, but they not as deep and strong as they used to be. I mean, I don't even think it's a question right now that the cartel, they got it. I'm talking about shit. Like, I think the only other thing now that you could really compare the cartel to would be something like the Taliban or some shit like that. Like, but the problem is like they can only be so big in Mexico, you know what I mean? Because all the money, all the bling bling, all that glitz and glamour shit is over here in America. And they can't necessarily infiltrate America and put that shit in the chokehold like they got Mexico, just because it's different. Like I said, we got different agencies. Like, people to this day don't really know who run America. Like, the president and the White House ain't got shit to do with who run this motherfucker. It's the motherfuckers, that 1% that they be telling y'all about, who got all the money, all these billionaires and all that. Them the motherfuckers who make way more decisions than y'all realize. Like, president, them motherfuckers just do what they told. But at the end of the day, I think, like, the cartel would probably be the one. If I had to pick out of the two, I would probably be more afraid of the cartel, just because I just know that they don't have a long-term plan for anything other than just killing me. You know what I'm saying? Like, they will have no issue making sure that my whole family is like torn apart. But as far as with the mafia, I feel like it's more money-wise. You know what I'm saying? I feel like with the right business acumen, with the right level of street savvy, with the right level of intellect, you can manipulate it, or you can put yourself in a position to where you can make something as profitable for both of y'all that they would benefit from you being alive. They would benefit more from having you doing whatever they need you to do, as far as just seeing you as they just gotta kill you. But I think that's the only way that you will be able to kind of rate those two. I'm talking about in their heyday now, because I know that they were more interested into like having these deals. Like they had these sit downs at the table. Everything was more structured, organized. They took the time to think and level out. Versus in the cartel, the motherfuckers is wild. They feel like you crossed me, so we going to war right now. We ain't even thinking about that shit. Ain't no sit downs, ain't no tables, ain't no none of that shit. So I think that was pretty much interesting because I like both of them now. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I studied that history shit, and the mafia had done a lot. Like Al Capone is my dude. Al Capone is my dude, man. That's fucked up, man. That nigga was stunting on him, and they had to get him on tax evasion just because he was stunting so hard on all the other shit. But as far as a lot of those guys in the cartel, it's like you don't really hear much about them just because it ain't that same type of party. They don't like glitz and glamour glorify that shit like how we do the American gangsters over here. You know what I mean? Like over there, that shit is like you either gonna be on top or you gonna be dead. It's just that simple. But this was pretty much interesting, man. It's like y'all come see me again next week. We'll have another topic. We're gonna be doing this on this season 2 of Versus. I mean, we've been kicking it, man. We knocking these shits out. We're gonna be here every Friday at 8 o'clock on S.B.G Network. Come rock with me, man. I'm gonna see y'all next week at the same time, same place.